As the world continues to evolve throughout history, so does the state and style of popular music. The genre known as R&B, or rhythm and blues, has developed immensely since its origins during the early 1900s. Once considered a phrase used to describe the music tailored towards an African American audience, R&B has gone through several changes in style, voice, and overall sound throughout the decades. With the dynamic force of Smokey Robinson, Michael Jackson, and the eighth wonder of the world, Stevie Wonder, dominating the 1960s, you'd likely assume the genre couldn't keep evolving. But 60 years later, in 2020, the genre is still birthing new, impactful albums like Fuck the World, pushing the genre forward. Let's take the time to understand the catalog of your not-so-average R&B artist, Brent Faiyaz. Christopher Brent Wood, better known as his stage name Brent Faiyaz, is an American artist and record producer born in Columbia, Maryland. Brent is the child of two school teachers, so his home life isn't the same as many R&B legends that were filled with abuse, violence, and drugs. Brent described his home life as regular. It allowed him to work a normal job at a grocery store and gave him space to focus on the music. Brent learned a lot from the places he lived in growing up. In Maryland, he learned to be thick-skinned and became receptive to criticism. In Charlotte, he learned the simple things in life can often be the most important. And in LA, he learned the business of his own brand. The Maryland native's musical career began after moving from Maryland to North Carolina. Brent was interviewed by a blogger, The Voice, and they asked him how Maryland impacted him musically, and he responded, "As far as my music, the home city is really my everything. I wouldn't work so hard if I was from an area where I didn't have so much to prove and so many people to put on for." In 2014, 1 year after relocating, he released his second EP, The Black Child. Black Child is the most rapping you'll hear from any Brent Faiyaz project. There's a reoccurring theme on this album which focuses on the idea of reaching success and breaking into the music industry. It's also littered with many friends' voicemails that involve them telling him to keep making music for himself and to keep reaching for the stars. From what we can gather through this EP, it seems as though Brent used it to encourage himself. While researching, I found this EP came after his family relocated from Maryland to North Carolina. The aspiring artist's parents gave him 1 more year after moving to make his dreams of breaking into the music industry come true. Black Child didn't break him into the industry, but Brent did receive a high-power cosign when it premiered on Drake's OVO affiliate Tommy Campo's Tumblr page. This may not seem like a lot, but this was at the height of Tumblr's accumulative numbers in 2014. 2 years later, Brent returned with the release of his EP, A.M Paradox. At first listen, this appears to be a musical journey heavily influenced by sex and one-night stands, but when listening back, I realized it was much more. Though only 5 songs, Brent strategically uses each song to tell a different part of the story. It's a concept album. Starting with Lovely, we're introduced to the woman the project is based on. With lines like, "Girl, don't act like you change when we both know you can't," Faiyaz is merely implying the same "you can't turn a hoe into a housewife" phrase. He's telling her that he knows she'll continue to keep her stripper ways. He's also saying that she is aware that he is only around for her sexual appeal. Insecure, the second track, is the call to action. With the first track giving us the setting and the main characters, the second track uses a cold atmospheric tone to explain Brent's decision between wanting to give more of yourself to someone new and wanting to protect the little you have left of yourself. The classic stuck in between a rock and a hard place scenario. Invite Me, the third track, is when he makes that decision. Listen to how he opens the verse.
Make up your mind. I know you're wondering why. I see this shit ain't as easy as it once was, but I'm sure you'll be fine.
First off, this nigga toxic as fuck. He was given the choice between a rock and a hard place and got under the rock. Brent's funny. He's clearly smart enough to notice a bad situation, but almost always tries to go the other way regardless of the outcome. And that's exactly what he does in this next track, Poison. He continues to mess with the same woman, but knows the relationship is damaging and poisonous. The album finishes with the girl trying to use Brent for his fame. Brent eventually sees through this and leaves the girl, pulling off in a foreign with her wanting him back. I think that's the thing I like most about his music. It somehow always shows the duality of things. It finds a space in the middle and chooses a side you would naturally think he'd be against. He's human. Next, there's Sonder Son. This album came together when Faiyaz and his team decamped to the Dominican Republic in the summer of 2017. In 2016, shortly after moving from North Carolina to Cali, Brent linked with D-Pats and a 2, and they formed the group Sonder. Sonder, which is also tatted over Brent's eye, is the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. Initially, Brent didn't want the group to be named Sonder, given the fact that he had that tat well before meeting his groupmates. He told LA Times, "I was like, nah man, get the hell out of here," he recalled. "I got this tatted on me. I just met y'all. If we start beefing or something, then I'm stuck with this forever." But eventually, since they couldn't find a better name, it will force him to give in. And they all eventually traveled to the Dominican Republic to work on his first solo debut, Sonder Son. Sonder Son is easily the most personal album we've heard from Brent so far. Opening the album with the skit of his mother yelling at him over a bad report card, Brent told Fader, "My family is from the Dominican Republic on my dad's side, and I'd never been there, so I figured it would bring some different energy out." And he was right. This album brings out a different energy from Brent. Unlike many R&B artists who only speak about relationships, sex, and drugs, Sonder Son is about the fact that we need each other in order to survive. Early on in the album is First World Problems / Nobody Cares. When Faiyaz sings, "As long as I pay rent, I don't whine about my paycheck. I know it's short, but I'll make ends, cause it could be a worse situation." Brent being from the States, he was culture shocked when he visited his father's home country. When he arrived, the Dominican Republic surprised him so much it convinced him to rewrite the album with concepts he discovered, poverty being a main focal point. Another message to the people grinding towards success. We must remind ourselves what has given us our success so far and learn to progress further. Albums like this are what separates Brent from the abundance of artists dropping in the 2000s. His music still has the common braggadocious lines about cars, girls, sexual advances, and luxurious run, but he still finds a way to present and relate to a lot of his listeners, which is one of his biggest assets. Lastly, let's talk about his second album, Fuck the World. Fuck the World isn't the typical club to bedroom tape. He croons and delivers cleverly crafted verses about far more than just his love and lusty interests. The project includes 10 smooth tracks with themes ranging from systematic racism to overindulgence of sex and money in the world. This project is a mixture of many of Brent's other projects. Split into 2 seasons, Good versus Evil, he straddles the line of his inner dialogue where he acknowledges he's being toxic but doesn't care because that's how the world is, and being cold-hearted over very warm beats that almost trick you into thinking he's a good guy. Again, this nigga toxic, but it makes sense. Throughout the album, he's truly searching for meaning. In season 1, an overwhelming majority of the songs, the distortion of his voice come across as both effortless and rapid. This seems to mimic Faiyaz's lack of ability to maintain emotional balance amongst his desire for overindulgence in drugs and sex. Faiyaz reveals his obsessive tendencies towards sex and troubled women. Like many of his other songs, he remains fully cognitive, acknowledging the problems at hand, but following his heart for the woman he loves regardless. Maybe he's not as toxic as he appears. In season 2, he embraces old school R&B vibes. He embraces high-pitched vocals and heavy riffs. On these tracks, he reveals his internal battles with self-love and his inability to remain grounded. Although he touches on low points in his life with these tracks, his dedication towards change is profound. On Let Me Know, Faiyaz sings, "Who can I love when they tell me I can't love myself? How in the hell could I possibly love someone else?" All in all, this album is a toxic silhouette that is shadowed by Brent's captivating vocals. The instrumentals complement the same druggy perspective that Brent speaks from as he tells his side of the story. It also highlights Brent's resilience in finding the answers to questions that many of us have in life. It's less than 30 minutes, but Brent somehow achieves a sense of closure, a complete story arc in which the presence of light and darkness is equally expressed and justified. And that's it. We've gone through to understand your not so average R&B artist, Brent Faiyaz. And I wanted to give a huge shout out to my boy Xavier for making my YouTube picture. If you guys need any pictures made, hit him up. Information in the description. If you like this type of video, don't forget to comment and subscribe. And if you're interested in a free Brent Faiyaz vinyl, comment an album that you'd like me to do next. And whichever album suggestion I like the most will win. Peace.